Yeah. Okay. I will talk a little bit about how you actually identify modules in modular architecture or in Helix. So I will start with a claim that identifying modules is actually an art form. Technically speaking, dividing a Sitecore solutions into individual modules is not that hard. What is hard is getting the boundaries of a module correct. So deciding what should stay in a module, defining your module structure, and so on. It does get easier with experience. Experience is definitely not all. Even an experienced architect can make mistakes along the way. Defining modules also require that you get to know the customer domain, the business domain. And there's really no set answers. There's not like this is the correct answer. You need to think all the time and refactor, revisit. Yeah. So first, a little bit about myself and why you should listen to me. I am currently a senior solution architect at Enablement Services, Sitecore EMEA. I started working there in July, which means it's quite recent. Yeah, before that, I've been working with Sitecore since about 2005 and has been working on a countless number of Sitecore solutions of varying sizes. And primarily as the lead developer or architect on the solution. I worked together with Thomas Elblom at Pencha back when, then he became the CTO and then he left and I'm technically still a Sitecore MVP since I was nominated for 2016, even though Sitecore employees cannot really be MVPs. So I'm kind of an MVP still. I even got it on my badge. I had to beg for it, but I got it. Many of the conventions and principles that you see in Helix originate from something that previously was called component architecture, which I used to provide training in back when I worked for Pencha. There's been a lot of change in naming and so on, and also new conventions. So it's not the exact same thing, but more or less it is. This actually also made it a bit difficult for me to plan this presentation because I usually do everything from the start to end, and now I had to come with this small topic and like squeeze it in between Elblom's slides. So bear with me if. So let's start out with some recap. What was a module again? Anyone remembers? Was what that guy talked about in the morning? Well, so a module packages all related objects for maintenance purposes. This means that everything that is everything that's related to one another, code files, configuration, template items, rendering items, setting items, etc., etc. All of this, if they have the same reason to change, they belong in a module. So what changes together should live together. It is the principles of package cohesion as described by a guy called Uncle Bob or Robert C. Martin. He have these three principles of package cohesion which tells us what should be within a module. I will talk a lot about something I call module responsibility, even though responsibility might not really be the correct word for it, because it is more about the cohesiveness of a module. It is what makes these files change together. You could say it is the reason for the module to change. Basically, that is the module responsibility. So, which objects are related to one another is decided by the principle called the common closure principle, and not by technological details. This is where if you're used to working with 3 or n tiers architecture where you divide everything based on their technical responsibilities, it can be a bit of a mind twist to start to think about the actual business side of it, the domain side of it. What will change together? If the customer changes a requirement, what will then change? So the common closure principle is more or less the single responsibility principle, but just taken up a notch for modules. So it's not about a single class only having one responsibility. It's about a single module only having one reason to change, one responsibility in the domain. So a small side note, Thomas also mentioned this, a module can be of any size. There's no rule saying that you cannot have a module which only contains one file. Well, if that one file covers its own responsibility and nothing else will change with this, then it does make sense to have a module with only one file. A module might also consist of hundreds of files. There's no set rule on how big a module can be. So I will talk a little bit about how you get started when you're developing your first solution following the Helix principles. Where to start. So the conventions give us the 3 layers. We have the foundation layer and the feature layer and the project layer. So we know by conventions that we need something on the project layer to provide a context for the solution. I sometimes like to call the project layer for the context layer, because this is where we take all the features, all the concrete implementations and put into a context. Now on this slide I just called it website. You will Habitat call it website, but the name should actually be something that the end users can understand. It could just be website. It might make sense. Someone orders a website, you call it a website. It could also be intranet if it's an intranet. It could be website X if the context is called website X. So it should not just by de facto standard be called website. The context should have a name that makes sense. So always try to pick up the names and terminology that is actually used by the business. Next thing is the foundation layer also tells you the foundation layer. If you have something that you want to reuse from other solutions, but it is not stable enough to maintain by itself, then you would move these basic modules into your foundation layer, so you have like a starting point there. Next thing is that what's going to be in the solution next? Well, you would know that you need something like metadata if you're creating a simple website. That makes sense, right? All pages need to have some metadata. You might need some page content. Would also make sense for some solutions, not for all solutions. But then let's say that our site also needs to have we have to present something, so we have to have something that can control assets, style sheets, so on and so forth. This might be controlled on the context layer, but let's say that we're building it like the Habitat example, and then we create a foundation module called assets. So this is all by conventions, allowing us to like draw which modules we know we need to start with. So let's say we also have something in the requirements about news and search and so on. And news and search, they might both rely on some indexing functionality, so we add an indexing foundation module and so on and so forth. So you just by following the conventions, you actually can outline the initial modules you need within your solution. This then leads us up to a question that I will try to ask you guys. Do you define modules top-down or bottom-up? Where top-down means that you start with defining all the modules in the solution. You take a whiteboard and you start drawing. We need these modules. Nothing more, nothing less. We need these. That's a top-down approach. Or do you start with code first? Do you start with drawing up which classes is needed to meet this requirement, and then you look at which of these classes will change together, and then you place them into modules. So, as I said before, the conventions gives you a starting point, and Habitat can be used as inspiration. You can look at Habitat because that's an example site showing a simple website implementation. So it's a really good reference point to, find inspiration. But does that mean that modules are identified top down then? Question? Anyone dares to answer?
It depends.
Depends on who's around.
The answer is no. I would highly recommend you to read chapter 28 in the book called Agile Principles, Patterns and Practices in C# by Uncle Bob, also known as Robert C. Martin. This is the one chapter, it's actually not that long even, but this is where all of the principles are described and where he discusses them. And as he notes out, then if we try to design the component dependency structure, replace the word component with the word module. If we try to design the module dependency structure before we had designed any classes, we would likely fail rather badly. That's because you won't know anything about the common closure. You won't know anything about what is actually within these modules. You will just have some names. So even though that the conventions will give you a starting point, then you should expect your modules to evolve bottom up. And you should allow them to change all the time. So, how do you identify modules then? Identifying modules is actually more about identifying responsibilities. If a responsibility change, it causes changes in all objects that is related to that responsibility. Responsibilities often originate from some kind of customer requirement. They ask for something, they ask for a search bar, they ask for a news page or something like that. And then, you start to think, what do I actually need to make a news page? I need a news view, I need a news list view, I need some indexing, I need some tagging, I need some blah 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 blah. And then you can kind of define this will change if the news responsibility change, then all of these files will change together. So we have a module, and let's call it news because that is how the customer interprets that responsibility. So just a second. Just want to ensure I don't forget anything. Naming a module. Naming a module is extremely crucial. The name of a module should always clearly indicate the responsibility of the module. It should be clear from for anyone who knows just a little bit about the customer domain what the module actually does, especially for feature modules. Foundation modules can be more technology related, so they might not make direct sense for the customers, but for feature modules it should always be the terminology that the end users use. So why do we have to care about these module boundaries at all? Why is it important? Why is it that we divide everything into these small modules? Well, let's say we have these files, some code files, some rendering, some various stuff that we need to add to the solution. Then we have the cohesion principles that explains us, which of these files should actually belong together. And we have the coupling principles that tells us how to create the dependencies between our modules. Who remembers the 3 principles of package cohesion? Yay! Come on, someone. No? No, not that guy. He doesn't. The guy shaking his head in the corner. He doesn't know it. No, we have the common closure principle, and the common reuse principle, and the reuse release equivalence principle. But yeah. My next question would be, who remembers the coupling principles? Can anyone remember the 3 principles on package coupling? Still no one? We have a hand.
I took a note. The acyclic dependencies, stable dependencies, stable abstraction.
Yes. So the coupling principles tells us something about dependencies where the stable dependency principle always depend in the direction of stability. The stable abstraction principle tells you that a module should be as abstract as stable as it is abstract. Yeah. And the acyclic dependency principle tells you that dependencies must not form cycles. Visual Studio, you can't do acyclic dependencies between projects. Visual Studio will complain, but you can do it via weak dependencies or implicit dependencies in code. That's where the danger lies. These 6 principles is actually what tells us what should be in a module. So it is hard to provide a recipe. This is how you identify a module. Requirements in a solution always change. Or you forgot something. Everyone forgets something. Or there was something you didn't think of or something. And the deadlines are getting close and you have a PM standing behind you and are we done yet? Are we done yet? Breathing down your neck. And you just need, you have to implement this functionality. It is not really related to this module, but it kind of, maybe in a way, what should I do? Oh, well, then suddenly you add it to some module where it doesn't belong, and you build up technical debt, which means that the boundaries of the module expand. And then comes the next requirement. Oh, we also need this and blah, 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 blah. And you add even more technical debt. And this will, over time, grow and grow and grow even further. And suddenly you end up with a complete spaghetti mess with where you no longer can visualize the dependencies just by looking through the solution. Then you end up in the same situation you would if you followed a monolithic architecture or whatever architecture. You don't get the benefits from modular architecture from Helix. Spaghetti is not a good thing, just to make sure to underline it. So, another small exercise, just to try it out. I would like you to try to come up with some examples of module responsibilities. The ones that is shown in Habitat is very straightforward. It's like common website functionality. But when you work on customer solutions, there's always something that is a bit more domain specific. Anyone can come up with an example from real life? I'm just gonna stand here and drink coffee until someone raises his hand. Oh,
Social media, I mean,
yeah, social media. Yeah,
so that could be a lot of things, whether it's
could be a lot of
pulling
things.
in content from social media networks or, share from add this kind of functionality.
Yeah, that's a good one. Very common. Anyone else? Oh,
Product information.
sorry.
Product information.
Product information. Yeah, that's a good one as well. One more. Then we-
Map generation, taxonomy stuff.
Yeah.
So as a foundation layer, right? If you have a few different pieces that they're trying to compete, or maybe I'm misunderstanding the principle.
Taxonomy. That brings us next to the next part of this exercise. Taxonomy. It depends on the use of taxonomy. It would typically be something that is on the foundation layer, where you expose an interface. Where you have like a base template that contains the tags, and then you can derive from this on. Yeah, different features can derive from the same taxonomy. But then taxonomy is actually a really good example where you often end up in a situation where you need to index something specifically. So you need to use a dependency inversion to inject what the feature needs to have indexed by the foundation. That's a whole other topic. Product information, is that a good name? Just asking. Could be.
Maybe call it product.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. Could be. I mean, it depends on what the customer calls it. Could be product. It could be product information. Product catalog sounds very related to a specific presentation. But yeah. So, can see my time is running. So I will, instead of trying to give you a recipe on how to identify modules, I will instead mention some of the very common mistakes that I come across working with this architecture for the last many years. One of the most common mistakes I see is that people start to define modules directly based on the visual design elements. And even though there is some resemblance to atomic design in some way or the other, it is not atomic design. You can implement an atomic design following modular architecture and so on, but you should not let the individual atoms define your modules. Then you would end up with something that looked like this. Then you would have a module called search box and a module called search result and module called news teaser and another one called news list. I don't know how good examples these are, but if you have a module name that implies some specific presentation, then there's typically something wrong. In some cases, there's of course cases where where a specific presentation is very domain specific and very crucial for the customer and something they actually see as one entity. So
A quick question.
yeah.
So, as it relates to component-based architecture, so in this particular habitat architecture, is modules and component the same, one and the same? So, kind of like module-based architecture?
Well, it depends on your definition of component.
Right. So typically in another, doing other development, you might have a search box component or a search result component or like news teaser component. So where does component-based architecture come into play with modules?
Well, one module can contain one or more components, HTML components, HTML elements.
Okay.
It might contain nothing, no components at all. It is all the, let's keep on using the word components. I like to call it HTML components, markup elements, like something specific for presentation. It is what changes together that should stay together in a module. So the search box and the search result from a presentation viewpoint will most likely change together. Because when the search implementation changes, both of these will change. So they should belong in a module together called search.
Got it. Okay.
So I just quickly want to throw in a comment there. So the wording modular architecture, which is used in Helix, there's a lot of consideration over that, because if you think of package design, you think of component architecture. So previously it was very inside Sitecore circles, it was known as component architecture. There's numbers of blog posts around on component architecture, but it clashed kind of with a lot of accelerators and principles that people use with components as visual elements on pages. So components are very often associated with those things that you stick on a page. I think there might even be a couple places inside Sitecore where it's named as components, the renderings.
Yeah.
So it's sort of a common name for all the rendering types. So that's why we sort of went over to modular. But again, it emphasizes the need for a domain language, because the association with a term is so strong.
I wrote a blog post. I wrote a couple of blog posts. Well, one of these is exactly about this naming. Back in the days, I always called this component architecture, and then when I was out presenting it as component architecture, people always, or almost always, thought I was referring to markup, to rendering items. I was referring to components as described by Uncle Bob in chapter 28 of Agile. But if you haven't read that book, then it's many words have different meanings. So I always started out with a glossary just to ensure that this is what I mean. Afterwards, people still didn't get it always, but I think not a lot of people talk about atomic design now, and some also make that. So some people then think, oh, modular architecture, Helix, oh, that's atomic design, but it is not. It is from two different worlds. Presentation is concrete. It is something that will change very often. It's unstable, actually. Calling something unstable sounds so rough, but it's actually okay to be unstable. It just means that you should be able to change. So unstable code is not a bad thing. It's a reality of,
So, based on what you're saying, a better way to structure this would basically just be have two features, like a search feature and a news feature, and then put the two search things into that.
Exactly.
Module. Okay.
Exactly. Because these will likely change together. They have the same reason to change. And you would probably also put other things within these. Another common mistake I see is naming modules by technology. A feature module name should always indicate the module responsibility in terms of the business domain, something that the customer can understand, not something related to a specific technology. I think, Thomas gave the example of Google Maps, Google Analytics, and so on, which is more a Maps module. Could be you needed, maybe you went over and used Bing Maps or something like that at some point in time. Of course, on the foundation layer, it can be, modules can be named more by technology if they are tightly related to a specific technology. So yeah, the name should be technology agnostic, and foundation modules can deviate from this rule. So another common mistake is the Swiss Army Foundation. That means a foundation module which just has a ton of responsibilities. A generic name such as utilities, helpers, or similar. You see that in really a lot of solutions, and that just indicate that the module has too many responsibilities at once, at least more than one. Or if it only has one responsibility, it's quite unclear what that is. Classic example is you need something to format a date. So you place that in some my solution helpers or something like that. And then you format a date on the news list, and you format one on the I don't know, blog comments, and then the one on the blog comments need to change, but the other one doesn't need to change. And then you change it, and then it has scaffolding effects throughout your solution, because it's the responsibility is unclear. Again, the common closure principle: the classes in a component should be close together against the same kinds of changes. A change that affects a component affects all the classes in that component and no other components. And the name should clearly indicate what this reason for change is, or the module responsibility. So Habitat is not flawless. Elblom stole my one example from me. Sitecore extensions module. The name Sitecore extensions was originally named extensions because it was a collection of extension methods. It was made at some implementation partner back in the days, where some guy gathered a lot of extension methods, which was used throughout all our solutions. You remember .NET 3.5 when it came out and used to start being extension methods. That was cool. We needed a module with all our common extension methods. It went into Habitat, and suddenly people thought, oh, it's something that extends Sitecore. That means everything. That's it has been cleaned up quite a lot. It was, if you look in the history, it looks just as 3 months back or something like that. It was way worse than it is now. Today there's still some, for example, the attributes, which is a bit if they should be in there. The skip analytics tracking attribute, for example. Rendering properties repository, I'm not sure if that's used by one of the extension methods. It might be, but then it should be marked internal, probably. And then the different services. They should maybe be all in their own individual modules. For example, having an analytics module. I think that is there already. Yes. That would that's how we used to do it at Apache. We had a build library where we put our Sitecore extensions in. And I would highly recommend for you to do the same. If a foundation module is that stable and doesn't change with the rest of the solution, then it shouldn't be in that solution. Then it should be in a solution by its own. And then it should be tracked by its own, version by its own. And then you should put it into your own local NuGet feed, or even share it with the rest of the world. Put it on NuGet. Write some blog posts about it. Become famous. Get a Sitecore MVP tag next time you're here. Sitecore haven't done this with the foundation modules you find in Habitat, it is an example website. It is for you to be inspired by, pick up from, and yeah, embed into your own processes. So another very common mistake is to lock the module structure more or less from start. So you try to take this top-down approach. It's typically seen when a newbie, an inexperienced new architect on a new Sitecore project, he tries to be like, oh, I know how this is done, and then he draws up all modules. And then you will try to make everything fit within these modules. Module composition will jitter all the time, and you need to think of the structure to be dynamic. This is it's an agile process, and modules will evolve over time. So it will evolve both while you're developing. You will figure out you will learn new stuff about how things are actually interrelated, but requirements will also change over time. And it's very important that your module structure don't lock you down. It shouldn't be. It should help you rather than lock you down. The layers. The whole purpose of having the 3 layers is actually to visualize the impact that you can expect when you start refactoring a module. So you know if you change something in the foundation layer, then you probably have multiple features that relies on it. If you change something on the feature layer, then only the context should be affected by this. So yeah, I had to have a GIF in here, an animated GIF in here. So you can't make everything fit into existing boxes. So you need to be able to let the module structure evolve over time and allow that new modules are created or old modules dies and so on. You should expect it to be an evolving process. So let's talk a little bit about evolving responsibility. I can see I don't have that much time left, so I might skip a little bit fast over it. We have the architect here and we have the customer. And we had the events module, and now the customer comes and tells us, oh, we would also like to show the event location on a map. Okay, that's rather easy. We just add some map stuff to the event module. That makes sense. It's just events. Oh, we also need to show our offices. Okay, well then we make an office module. And here it comes. Oh, we also need to show our offices on a map. Okay, well, should we then add an office map to the office module as well? Then we have 2 maps. That might make sense, who knows? What more does she say? Oh, the map should look like the map on the event page. And they're out of money, and blah, 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 blah. So, coming back, trying to sketch up, well, we already have our website module, we have our event module that we made before. So, what should we do? Yeah, we definitely need an office module because we have to present these offices. And then we could, in the event module, we could simply add everything that is needed to show the event on a map. And then we could do the same for the office module. So we keep the 2 maps residing in each module. So it will stay there. That would potentially give you some duplicated code, and maybe in the future the customer asks, can we update this one map, and then they would presume that also updates the other map and so on. But, well, it's a solution. Another solution could be that we could introduce like a location concept and place on the foundation layer, and then we could like reuse some shared functionality, at least, for example, for calculating where the small thing on the map should be and so on. So we have some abstraction that the two maps share. Well, that's a solution as well. We still have the actual implementation of the map residing in each module. Oh, then there's yet another solution. We could simply introduce a new maps module and then instead compose the page in the context. For example, using the experience editor. So you have let's call it just a map view, you have the event details view, and you have the office details view, and then you put everything together on the different page types, or you let the editors handle that. But picking this solution also means that you can't make specific changes to the map shown on the event page and so on. So which solution should you pick in this case? Is there any correct answer? No. There's not. And maybe you picked the wrong solution and have to adapt it. Who knows? But you at least need to consider it from the beginning. What you could expect to change together. Better talk to the customer. Yeah, better talk one time too many than one time too less. One time too little, it's called. Well, some guidelines for identifying modules. First one is a module has only one responsibility. Project layer modules have the responsibility of providing a concrete context. For example, a website, an intranet, whatever, shop, who knows. Website X. Feature modules always have one concrete business domain responsibility. For example, news, search, events, brochures, FAQ, so on. Something that is specific for the business domain. They should never have any real technical responsibilities. They have a responsibility in terms of the business domain. Foundation modules always have one abstract business domain or technical responsibility. For example, authentication, indexing, Sitecore extensions, which is a bad name. But yeah. Next guideline here is changing or removing a feature layer module should never impact other feature or foundation layer modules. This is a really good rule of thumb. Can I remove this module? Can I remove this feature without it affecting other features? If you can't, something is wrong and you need to refactor, but you shouldn't worry about refactoring, you should just do it. If you leave it for a long time, the technical debt will grow and grow and grow, and you will end up with spaghetti. So this is kind of the same thing. A feature module needs to be flexible, and change is allowed also over time. When some responsibility comes up and it's shared between two features, then you should abstract this away into a foundation module. And then keep the concrete implementations in the concrete features. What changes together should stay together. The classes in a module should be closed together against the same kind of changes. This is the common closure principle. I will repeat it once more.